Welcome to Entry Point Faith, where every week we discover fresh meaning in the world so you can find faith your way. And now, please welcome your host, Pastor Nancy Lafferty.
Former Olympic athlete Wilma Rudolph has said, "Winning is great, sure, but if you're really going to do something in life, the secret is learning how to lose." We all love to win. Children, adults, all of us. Whether it's a board game or cards or a sport or a race, we like being on the winning team. We like to be cast in the successful theatrical production. We want to win at having a great family life, a terrific, cool job, or an enviable friendship. When we are winning, we feel good. And we even push a little bit more to give our best effort. But when we aren't winning, we feel hurt. And we sometimes even feel disrespected. We have all observed children melting down or misbehaving after being on the losing side. They become angry and sad. They want to quit, and they're unwilling to acknowledge any part of the responsibility for the loss. Losing can feel overwhelming to children and to adults. Many adults have the exact same reactions as children when they lose. Winning is very, very important to many people, and I happen to be one of them. Today, I want to talk about why becoming a better loser is a good life skill to have, one that we will use over and over again. Recently, I read an NPR article that was a complete game changer for me. Sports journalist Sam Weinman stated, "So while you might be inclined to try and avoid an L in the middle of your forehead at any cost, a better perspective is to learn to lose well." So you might ask, why should we even bother trying to learn to lose well? Well, let's think about this a moment. Losing is an unavoidable, universal experience. As a kid, we might be a sore loser when playing football or baseball or soccer or basketball. How we deal with successes and failures in sports or other childhood activities can be an indication of how we might navigate other obstacles later on in our adult life. And let's face it, throughout much of our lives, we experience losing things. People, jobs, houses, relationships, our health. It isn't just in sports and in cards that we lose. A great deal of our lives is steeped in loss. Weinman writes, "If you can't handle things going awry when the stakes are small, you're in for that much more of a rough ride when the real challenges start to mount." When we become adults, we hopefully realize that the temper tantrums that we once exhibited as children as sore losers are no longer socially acceptable. But we still end up feeling sad and angry at times. One of the telltale signs of a sore loser is someone who isn't willing to take ownership of their own fallibility. And we all know what that means. It means we find anything or anyone else to blame for the loss. Or, equally bad for us, we turn the blame inward and we start beating ourselves up. This is where we need to inject some self-compassion. Here are 3 ways to help us stop beating ourselves up. The first one is to practice mindfulness. Now, you have heard me say that word many, many times over the last several years. When we can acknowledge our feelings, without judgment, we are making progress. We need to be aware of what we are feeling and where it is affecting our body. We need to be present in the moment. The second way to cope with a little bit less beating ourselves up is to understand human commonality. We have to be able to accept this phrase: losing is normal. We always act like winning is normal and losing is unusual. Humans experience failure all the time. Thirdly, it's time for us to be kind to ourselves. We need to tell ourselves that everything's going to be okay, and we will get through it, because it will be okay. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Everything will be okay. When I was growing up, our next-door neighbor used to always say to all of us kids, "It'll be okay, it'll be okay, it'll be okay by the time you get married." And we all used to laugh. All three of those methods help us to manage our emotions in the moment. When we suffer a high-stakes loss, it is often very hard to look past it and know what the next step is that we should take. And honestly, most of us have suffered at least one significant loss in our lives. The relationship or the job is suddenly terminated. The body stops functioning as it should. A person leaves this world abruptly. The family dynamic changes. We have all found ourselves in a significant life loss. So how do we become a better loser in these types of situations? The answer to that question lies in the adaptation of what is called a growth mindset. A growth mindset requires us to stop sitting with the disappointment of the past and to work on building for the future. Having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset is a key factor to being a good loser. When we have a fixed mindset, we focus on the final score, and we think that talent and intelligence are static. Growth-minded people believe that effort can lead to mastery. Weinman writes, "The great losers are the people who are able to recognize that a loss is just one step in a process, but it doesn't need to be the last step." You may be familiar with the story of Jay Williams. Jay was an all-star basketball player at Duke University, and he was the second pick in the NBA draft for the Chicago Bulls. Here he was, using Michael Jordan's old locker and living in the same apartment building as Oprah Winfrey. And then, one day in 2003, his career, his health, and his paycheck were all lost in an instant after a motorcycle accident. Williams discovered that even after he had healed, everybody continued to define him by everything that he had lost. Of course, he was angry, and hearing the constant reminder of all that he had lost fueled his anger. Until one day, when Williams became aware of what he still had. He began to feel appreciation for the life that he still had, the fact that he could walk and even run with his daughter. He wouldn't play basketball again, but he decided to stop sitting with the disappointment and start building his future. Jay eventually became an NBA analyst and a podcast host. No one wants to receive a trophy for being a good loser, but being one is an incredibly admirable trait. Often when we lose, it's really out of our control. The loss has nothing to do with us. Sometimes we can just chalk the loss up to a bad day or elements outside of our control. We lost our job because the business went under. We had an accident. Random events occur as often as the randomness in a card game. Sometimes the team is just tired and they can't buy a basket. And finally, my friends, those of us who really like to win are setting ourselves up for a really very temporary feeling. The glory, the rush, the elation of winning is ever so fleeting. In the Bible, we find these words: every athlete in training submits to strict discipline in order to be crowned with a wreath that will not last. It's much more important for us to become better at losing than at winning. Amen.
Thanks for joining us this week on Entry Point Faith. The Entry Point Faith community meets every other Sunday at Conner Prairie in Fishers, Indiana. For more information or to join in person, visit entrypointonline.org. Entry Point Faith is a part of the Switchpoint Media Network. Find a variety of podcasts by visiting switchpoint.media.